it's a very good morning from him, and of course, it's a very good morning from me. I hope you're all well. Welcome to my live stream, Paul Archer's Mortgage Insights live stream. All updates for you on the mortgage sector. Hope you're well. It's kind of springtime now in this country. Of course, we've got Easter coming up this weekend, which is going to be actually quite nice weather. We've had so much rain; it's unbelievable. I think we've had more rain this month than we've ever had since records began. And I always wonder when records began, aren't they? Records began in 2005. You know, that's like only like 17 years of records. We've had hundreds of years of history before that, haven't we? So, all happening here in the UK. The weather's getting better. Got the Cheltenham Lido's opened up again, so I head down there once or twice a week. So I enjoy that. So that's all about summertime, isn't it? But of course, we've got the new tax year starting on Thursday, actually Thursday the 6th of April. Now, for those of you in the business, you understand this, and of course it affects everything you do. So I want to talk about the tax year today. I want to talk about tax changes and do some income tax calculations for you, just to get you up to speed and all the new numbers, and just to get you up to date with how things roll. Because I was looking into how the tax year, or why is the tax year the 6th of April? People often say, well, why is it not the 1st of January? You know, it makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? And you can Google it, but it's all about history, really, which is quite fascinating, actually, because way back in BC time, I think it was like 45 BC, Julius Caesar, who was like the head dude then, created what's called the Julian calendar. And we all kind of followed that back then, of course, because we didn't really have much civilization really after the Romans had finished. Anyway, there was apparently it was a dodgy leap year in the Julian calendar, but we had a 1st of January kind of New Year. Of course, we did that, but a dodgy leap year meant that over hundreds of years, time moved forward. And by the time the Middle Ages came around, 1300s, we had a 25th of March was our new year, because they didn't count for leap years, did they, or something like that. But anyway, so 25th of March is what we had. Now, of course, this all changed in 1582. The Pope then decided to swap to the Gregorian calendar. There you go. You love all these things, don't we? And we Brits didn't do that, because we had our own Parliament then, all sorts of things going on, didn't we? We were tough, we were. So we took another 200 years before we changed it in 1750. But of course, we had the old one, so we were losing a leap year. They were gaining a leap year. Anyway, what happened is that we had to add another 10 days or 11 days to our calendar. Hence, of course, the 6th of April came around. And that's been the case ever since. So 6th of April is the new tax year. I don't know if that helps you to break the ice with a client, possibly. It probably doesn't, but it's all part of the fun there. Anyway, hope all's good with you. Let's get into taxation, shall we? So the first thing I want to talk about is some of the changes in the new tax year that you need to be aware of, and how it affects mortgage advisors. So let's head over to the whiteboard for this one, on a pre-prepared whiteboard that I've already created for you, called Taxation Changes 2023-24. Now, remember, if you're doing an exam, you will get what's called the tax sheet. The tax sheet is given to you in the exam, either on the screen or in paper, and all the numbers are on there. So you don't need to remember any of these numbers that I'm going to talk to you about. But if you're just keeping up to date with things, then of course a quick overview of the changes is quite useful for you. Now, of course, we're talking here about tax changes in this year. The big phrase to use now is called fiscal drag. There you go, fiscal drag. I love that phrase, don't you? It's it just sounds like a nightclub or something. Fiscal drag, or maybe a sports car race. I don't know where you're coming from, but the point is, fiscal drag is being used by the government now to drag more and more people into paying high rate tax without them knowing about it. So, don't tell people, because in a few years' time, they'll become higher rate taxpayers and didn't even know about it, because they're not increasing any of the numbers. You see, they're not increasing the allowances. And they said it's up to 2027, 28. There's an election before then, so it may change. But they're dragging people into high rate taxes by letting inflation increase their salaries, keep the bands as they are, and thus more people get dragged into paying high rate tax. Bit naughty, but they need the money to pay the bills, like everybody, don't they? So what are the big changes? Well, there's 3 changes really. Over here, we've got pensions. So let's have a quick look at the pensions changes on taxation. Over here, we'll take a look at capital gains tax, CGT. And over here, we'll finish off by taking a look at income tax, shall we? We'll put a little title in there for you: income tax. So pensions you've probably heard about. Let's face it, unless you've been living under a rock, you would have heard about the pension changes, because they're all quite well publicised. What's happening with a pension is that the ability for people to pay more into it has increased. Now, as you know, people pay into what's called the pot. So that's your pension pot. It's just a phrase, isn't it, that we use? It's a tax-free fund. So people pay into a pension pot. The pension grows, pays them income when they retire. And the amount you can pay into the pension has increased for the tax year, which is really good. So, if you've got a salary, you pay that in to a maximum of 60,000. So that's gone up, isn't it? So let's just squeeze that in there. So you can pay 60 grand into your pension pot if you've got a salary to prove it, no more than 60, which is great. For those people that are already taking their pension, which is a bit of an odd thing, isn't it? They can put in 10 now as well. So that's increased the amount they can pay in. So I put it up to that end as well. They can put 10k in each year. That's the first thing that's changed. The big change is what they call the lifetime allowance. Now, there used to be this maximum pot that somebody could accrue. It was just over £1 million, which is an awful lot of money. But if somebody had more than £1 million pot, it meant they were taxed on it when they took their pension, which is not good. So most people restricted themselves to no more than that pot. Now, this lifetime allowance, as it's now called, for this tax year, it's actually at 0%. So if somebody exceeds the lifetime allowance, then they're not going to be taxed. So effectively, it's not there, is it? And next year, it's going to go completely. And that's the thing. So as you can appreciate, all these doctors they're applying this to, aren't they? People that have plenty of money, they can start paying more into their pension pot and grow a bigger pot. There's no restriction now to the pot, so you can have as much as you like. And when you come to retire from 55 onwards, you can take it as an income or whatever you want to do. If you've taken the income, you're taking your pension, you can still put in £10,000 per annum. That's gone up from a smaller figure as well. Now, the other thing is pension tax-free cash. Think about this. This is mortgage territory now. A lot of people still use their pension pot to pay their mortgage. So they have an interest-only mortgage. They use a pension pot to pay it off. Now, it's always been a quarter pension commencement tax lump sum. So I call it tax-free lump sum. Yeah, lump. The pension commencement lump sum, it's called, but it's a quarter of the pot. Now, that's actually being restricted to 25% of the old lifetime allowance, which is dead confusing, isn't it? So actually, that's now restricted to £268,275, because that's a quarter of the old lifetime allowance. Just confusing, isn't it? But I don't think many people have pension-linked mortgages these days. So it probably doesn't affect most mortgage brokers. So that's pension changes. Now, capital gains tax. This affects you if you're dealing with landlords, people buying second properties, holiday lets, or whatever it is. And the whole point about capital gains tax is you have to pay on those kind of properties and other assets as well. Now, the big change here is the £6,000 annual exemption. There you go. Each year, you can make 6 grand's worth of capital gain and not pay capital gains tax. It's gone down. It was just over 12,000 last year. They've halved it, and they're going to halve it again the following year. So they're going to get rid of that, aren't they? Which the upshot of that is that more people will pay capital gains tax. Is it the nail in the coffin of sole trader landlords, people who are buying properties in their own names? Because individuals pay capital gains tax, by the way. So that might be the nail in the coffin for the individual landlord, the accidental landlord, the part-time landlord, the dinner party landlord, George Osborne called them. It might be the end of those people. Because if you buy a property with an SPV, a special purpose vehicle, limited company, then there's no capital gains tax to pay, because companies don't pay capital gains tax. So that might be an issue. That's capital gains tax. Changes in income tax for you. Couple of changes in income tax. As I mentioned to you, the allowances and the bands are all staying the same, which is lovely, isn't it? The one change, though, is the additional rate tax band. These are people that have to pay 45% tax, people that earn lots of money. Now, the band for that's coming down to just over 125,000. So they've reduced it from 150 to 125. And over the next few years, more and more people will get dragged into that 45% tax band for a chunk of their income, which, is bad news for those people, good news for the government, of course. Again, that's fiscal drag at its very best, isn't it? Other stuff hasn't changed. That's good news. A couple of small things for you. The first one is the married couples allowance. There you go. I'm not talking about the marriage allowance. That's very different. That's one I want to show you later. The married couples allowance is an antiquated legacy allowance, just like your personal allowance, given to married couples, but only for those born before 1935. So you're talking about old dudes here. Even my dad was born 1938. He's old, but these are really old people. So if you're dealing in the later life lending market or equity release market, you may come across people of that age. What's happening here is that their allowance has gone up. It really means they get 10% tax relief. They get a little bit of tax relief on their income, which is brilliant. But the more they earn, they lose it, you see. So you've got to be careful with equity release. You don't give them income that takes them above the bands and they start to lose this married couple allowance. It's worth a couple £100 a year in tax relief. So be careful of that one. Just check out the details of that. We've got another video on that one as well. It describes it to you. The third area is the dividend allowance. Dividends. Divs, of course, are paid to people that own their own businesses, owner directors, obviously people who own shares. Dividends are paid there as well. And this allowance is going down to £1,000. It used to be quite healthy once, but it's going down, 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 and it's almost gone, isn't it? And this will affect your owner directors who buy or take out mortgages with you. An owner director is she runs her own limited company. It's a small company, it's only herself, maybe one other. And she pays herself a small salary to keep below the personal allowance and loads of dividends because she avoids national insurance. Legally, by the way, because the dividends that she pays herself are now getting taxed more and more now than ever before. So you might find owner directors now start to pay themselves bigger salaries and less in dividends. But their accountant, of course, will work that one out. So that's just an example of a small change. So overall, then, not a lot of changes, which is rather nice, isn't it? Not a lot of changes, which is lovely in a way. So we don't need to remember too much. Remember fiscal drag, though. Fiscal drag, because they haven't changed any of the allowances, is going to drag more and more people into paying high rate tax. But then if they earn it, they should pay it, shouldn't they, at the end of the day? But that's politics. And we don't talk about politics on these things, do we? Hope that's been useful. Bye. There you go. All right, quick update for you. That's all that was, just to keep you informed of what's going on. What I'd like to do now is to share with you how taxes are calculated. A lot of people get confused with this, particularly if you're doing an exam and you're a little bit confused about taxation. So let's talk about income tax calculations and how we calculate somebody's income tax for the tax year 23-24. So the current tax year that starts on Thursday, or whenever you're watching this video. Now, there's been some slight changes to one of the bands, which I need to highlight with you. And I want to show you how it's calculated, because a lot of people get really quite confused with this. So remember, you get your tax sheet in the exam, so you know the numbers. So I just want to share with you how they're calculated. And I've got 5 situations for you. I've got a non-taxpayer, I've got a basic rate taxpayer, I've got somebody with the marriage allowance, I've got a higher rate taxpayer, and I've got an additional rate taxpayer to share with you how this all works. So let's head over to some slides then so we can see the numbers, and I'll take you through them. So the first person then is a non-taxpayer. It's an example of how we calculate it. Now there's my bucket, as I call it, because what I do is I put the income in that bucket to show you how the calculations are made. So a lot of people like the bucket concept. So the first example then I'm going to give you is Sandra. Sandra, she earns £8,800. So it's probably a part-time job, that, isn't it? It's quite below minimum wage otherwise. So in the bucket, I'm going to put Sandra's income, £8,800 per annum. That's for the whole year. Now that's her income. Now Sandra, like everybody else, is entitled to a personal allowance. This is the amount of tax-free pay that you're entitled to. And Sandra, like everybody else, has £12,570 in personal allowance. And what this means is she can earn up to that amount of money from any source, really, tax-free. Isn't that great? Now, the good news is, of course, that this personal allowance completely evaporates her salary. So Sandra pays no income tax. Hooray! But then again, she doesn't earn a lot, so she doesn't really need to pay income tax. It's not fair if she does. So let's take a look at somebody that does pay income tax. So let's take a look at somebody who's a basic rate income tax payer. So I've got here for you June. June earns £20,000. So let's put June's 20 grand in the bucket right at the top there. So that's like filling the bucket up with £20,000. Now, June, like everybody else, has a personal allowance. We've said that before. So let's put the personal allowance in there, 12,570. Remember, that's all tax-free. So she shouldn't have to pay tax on that amount of income, which then leaves the difference between what she earns and the personal allowance liable to tax. And that happens to be £7,430. That's just the difference, isn't it, if you work it all out? Now, that's charged at the basic rate. That's the first band of tax. It's applied at 20%. So there's easy calculation there. That's how much tax June has to pay. Now, she'll pay that by PAYE system, by the pay as you earn. She's employed. She could be self-employed, of course, but she's PAYE, she's employed. She'll pay that monthly. Her payroll people will deduct it from her pay packet, and she'll be very, very happy with that. Well, she won't be happy, but she didn't have to pay that much tax, so she's generally quite happy. Now, the next situation then is another basic rate income taxpayer. Now, I've got here Brian. He earns 35,000. Now, obviously, bearing in mind June was on 20, you're still within the basic rate threshold here for Brian. But Brian's very lucky because he has Marie. Let's put Marie in there. Now, Marie, his spouse, civil partner or spouse, doesn't make a difference, earns nothing. She's a non-taxpayer. She didn't earn any money at all. She's a non-taxpayer. Now, Brian, of course, has a personal allowance like everybody else. So he's got a personal allowance of 12,570. But the good news is Marie also has a personal allowance, but she hasn't used hers because she's not earning, is she? So she can transfer 10% of her personal allowance over to Brian. Isn't that cool? So add that to Brian's personal allowance. There you go. Increases his personal allowance to a much bigger figure. Isn't that fantastic? Not a lot, is it? But it all matters because she's obviously doing other things, bring up children possibly or something. I don't know, and therefore they need every penny they can have. These two. So do the calculations as always. We need to work out the difference between his increased personal allowance and his salary. So that's 21,170. That's applied at basic rate because he hasn't hit the high rate band yet. So that's £4,234 tax payable monthly, again under his PAYE system. Jolly good show for Brian and Marie. That's the marriage allowance. Okay, let's get into some big earners now. Let's get into high rate income tax. So I've got here for you Anita. Anita earns £60,000, which is a cool salary, and she's going to be a high rate taxpayer, and I'll show you how. Anita, though, let's put a salary in first of all. Anita, as you can see, also has a personal allowance, like everybody else, and that's tax-free, which is great. Beyond that, she has to pay tax. Now, she has actually now eclipsed the basic rate threshold. There's a cap of basic rate tax that people pay. So she hits the cap. So put the cap in. Now, this cap, which includes the personal allowance, as you can see there, is the most income she can earn without paying any more high rate taxes. This is the basic rate cap, and that's a maximum there of 37.7, which is the most of basic rate tax that you'll pay, most salary applied at basic rate tax. If you did the numbers there, you can work it all out. 37.7 plus 12,570 gives you the 50,270 cap. Multiply that by 20%, easy peasy lemon squeezy, gives you 7,540, as you can see. So that's the most basic rate tax you pay. Now, she exceeds it and she's now into higher rate tax. Can you see? So we have to work out the higher rate. Now, the higher rate happens to be 9,730 because that's the difference in what she's earning and the basic rate cap. Now, this is applied at 40%. Now, can you see there's two calculations that makes her liability? And then you have to add it up, and that's her total tax, as you can see. So there's two calculations to do for Anita. So you need to bear that in mind. Let's go the whole hog now, and we'll go for somebody who earns like mega amounts, and we'll put in Umran, who earns 175 grand, lucky chap. So let's put his income into the pot, shall we? Now, Umran had a personal allowance. There you go, 12,570. Yeah, tax-free, like everybody has. But the problem is, I say had, is that he loses it since he earns over £100,000. Just the way it goes, I'm afraid, and rightfully so. Really, somebody earning £100,000 shouldn't really have a personal allowance. It's politics, but you can argue either way, can't you? So we just get rid of that now. It's gone. But he's got no personal allowance, so his entire income now is applied against the bands. Now, the first band, of course, the basic rate cap, 37.7 is the most basic rate tax you can apply a salary to. So we did that calculation earlier, didn't we? So 37, I don't know, that's 7,540. Now, he's also into high rate, as you can see, but he's hitting the high rate cap, which has now been reduced down to 125,140. That's the change. That's the most high rate tax you'll pay on a salary. So that, again, that's a massive amount of money. 87 grand he's got in higher rate at 40%. So look out, 34 grand he's got to pay. But now he's into additional rate. An additional rate goes on forever. And this is, as I say, his salary there, 175. So he's got 49 grand additional rate at 45%. So he's got 3 calculations makes up his tax bill. So add those together, he's got to pay 64 grand. That's over a third of his income in tax. But hey, rightly so in a way, isn't it? Because he's earning the money. So you can see why the more you earn, the more tax you pay. It's because you get into high rate, you get into additional rate tax. So there's all sorts of things going on here you can do for him. You can get him to pay into a pension and reduce it. You can do all sorts of tax-free ways of investing money, etc. So financial advisors loving them around. They do all sorts of things for these guys as well. So that shares with you how income tax is paid. So as you can see, that's calculations. You won't get that kind of calculation in an exam, but you should be able to recognize a basic, higher, or additional rate taxpayer. And you should be able to do basic calculations for the exam as well. But it's his only CMAP. It's not an accountant's exam. So I hope that's been useful. Bye. Okay, well done, everybody. Let's wrap up. Let's just want to tell you a quick little story, which is quite a useful one for anyone involved in property, really, if you're involved in property. And I call this little story, well, I like to call it the custodian. You're only the custodian. And it just makes you, maybe it's something you can talk to customers about if they're worrying about their house in some way or other. So let me share the story. As you know, it's been very wet here in the UK, incredibly wet March, more rain than since records began. So if you go for walks, and Shelley and I love our walks, you're like swimming in mud, aren't you, across fields and things. So we decided to go for a walk along country lanes because, you know, at least you can walk on them, can't you, in the rain? And we went over to a place called Sherborne. Let me share with you where Sherborne is, if you're interested. So let's put a map up there for you. Here's the Ordnance Survey map of the Cotswolds. On the left-hand side there, you've got Northleach, and down the bottom right, you've got Burford, I think. So if we just zoom in for a second, this is where we went to this place called Sherborne. It's along the main road there. It's a beautiful part of the world. And we did a loop around these villages, or around these country lanes. And we passed some beautiful properties. I mean, it's lined with villages. There's a little village shop there in Sherborne. Isn't that just beautiful, isn't it? And there's another property that we passed by. That's gorgeous, isn't it? That's a few million pounds. These are piles, aren't they? These are old relics. These are thatched cottages, rectories, manors, just beautiful. And this old place here as well, which is listed, I think. And we passed this place as well, which is literally a manor house. I think that's Sherborne House. You know, it's ridiculous size that one is. But the great thing about these properties that we pass by is that you know, we admire architecture, both of us do. And I don't know, Shelley said to me, I wonder what it's like, she said, to own those houses and live there. What it's like to own it, you know, must be so proud. I said, well, actually, you don't really own those kinds of houses we talked about, because those houses I shared with you are, you know, a couple of hundred, 4, 5, 6, 700 years old. The people living there have probably lived there for 5, 10, 20, 25 years, and they'll move on or die, and somebody else will live there. You see, when you have a house, you're not the owner, you're just the custodian. And that's the phrase. You're only the custodian of a property that you're happy to be living in. At some point, that property is going to be passed in your will to somebody else, maybe a next of kin, or, you know, you might sell and give it to somebody else. You know, you're only the custodian. And that's an important concept. If you're talking to somebody who's thinking about equity release, for example, you know, they're sitting on a pile of bricks and they're thinking about equity release and they're worrying about it, about the inheritance and all that kind of stuff. The fact is that they are only the custodian of that property. That's all. They're never going to own it. It's not their home, really. You're just the custodian. So it kind of removes the the emotional part of equity release, because it no longer becomes a home, it becomes an asset which you're securing a loan against, of course, and then paying your grandchildren early money or something like that. It just relieves or removes some of the emotional aspects of owning a property. I like that one. You're only the custodian. Some lovely properties there, aren't there? It's a beautiful part of the world. The one I love is this one here. Let's just put it back for you. This is the great one. Look, this is like a little tea room, isn't it? It's beautiful. You got a little place out there for a cup of tea and everything. Just absolutely gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. Can't argue with that at all, can you? And of course, you got this property here and this one and that one as well. Anyway, I hope that's been of use to you. Easter this weekend, so we won't be doing a live stream on the Monday because it's Easter Monday and most people are having some time out. So we're going to do the same. Obviously, got family coming up as well. Got Jess coming over from Scotland, my two boys coming over as well. So it'd be a fantastic weekend. We're looking forward to it. I'm doing a roast lamb on Sunday. I'm cooking it from fresh. So looking forward to that. Lots and lots and lots. Lots of things going on in Tivoli Studios. We've got our new financial advisor product starting. We're helping advisors or mortgage brokers become financial advisors with their DIP-FA exams. So that's coming up. We've got all sorts of new products happening, new materials coming in as well to help people to become mortgage advisors. We've got some Easter specials, by the way. If you haven't seen those, we've got a great deal on our boot camp. We're putting in books, so we're posting the books for free, which is a great deal for you. It's worth 60, 70 quid, that. And we've got a digital deal as well. A lot of our digital products we're bundling together for a decent saving for you. So look out on our database for that, because we just keep people informed of that one as we go along. So lots happening. Other than that, have a fantastic week. Enjoy your Easter as well. Don't dilly dally. Enjoy a bit of spring air. And if you're ever down to Sherborne, of course, pop in. There's some great little properties down there you can take a look at. Other than that, I'll see you all again soon. So take care, everybody, and we'll see how you get on and enjoy your Easter break. Bye for now.